2015, 2016, there started to be a trend that the cars were a bit too easy to drive, not very challenging, not very spectacular. So there starts to be a few complaints from the public watching the races that it didn't look dramatic enough anymore, especially having lost the screaming sound of the old V8. For 2017, there was then a clear mandate from the regulations and from Formula One to present cars which would be a lot faster by several seconds a lap, which would be far more spectacular to watch, more challenging physically from the driver's perspective, such that it would be a bit more exciting to watch. 2017, chassis-wise, was a very large step up in performance. The cars got bigger, the tires got bigger as well. It's like from a 2017 car, everything got bigger, just to increase the potential for performance. The front wing came wider, the floor came wider with a bigger diffuser, the rear wing got wider as well, and crucially there was the reintroduction of the barge boards. All these got put together for 2017. Aerodynamically, in terms of aerodynamic concept, what you try and do with the airflow to extract performance, 2016 to 2017 did not change so much. You were still trying to get as much front outwash as possible. It just looked like for 2017, to achieve the desired aerodynamic effect, you're being given a toolbox with a much bigger hammer. This meant the development for 2017 was very intense. The more you tried to find downforce, the more you would get. It was as if for these new cars, you had less time to develop than potential available. There were other aspects of the regulations which would allow you to be highly creative. There were a few doors opening to do things a bit differently, and this is where we started finding possible new designs of the side pod, which was quite specific to the Ferrari early on, and which started to set a trend which everyone adopted because, yes, aerodynamically, these sort of regulations allowed to do that, and it was just another way to get more and more performance. Alongside all these aerodynamic changes, of course, the fact the car got bigger, the car got as well heavier, something to a minimum weight of 728 kilo. Comparatively to 2014, this weight increase was fairly benign because in parallel, the aerodynamic performance and the downforce we would achieve was far greater than the effect of the weight. Then of course, with the increased downforce, these cars were producing more drag, so they would be quite a bit slower in straight line, but the lap time you would make through corner was very, very good, shall I say. Corners which were grip limited or labeled high-speed corners, but true corners in 2016, they were not corners anymore. With these new cars, you would go flat in pretty much everything you thought were corners before in terms of high speed. This is, broadly speaking, what the new cars brought. Much higher performance in cornering, although through high speed, it wasn't so challenging from the driver's perspective. Watching from the outside, that was the place where these cars would look truly impressive. With such an increase in performance and such an increase in downforce, it was more difficult to overtake because as a consequence of the grip, the braking distance became much, much shorter. You would basically have only one racing line. So through 2017, although the cars were much faster, you would start seeing, well, it's a bit difficult to overtake, a bit difficult to follow. For 2018, it was a very moderate change of regulations, trying to contain a bit the downforce increase. There was a reduction of the fin on the engine core of the car. What we call the body wing got removed, which in itself was pure drop of downforce. Then the halo for safety got added. The halo itself was affecting the performance of the rear wing. So all these together meant that by regulation for 2018, teams were going to lose a little bit of base performance, but all this was not enough to counter the potential for development of these new generation of cars. 2018 was very much a continuity of 2017. The one thing which started to come very evident in 2018 with the amount of performance of these cars, tires started to be stressed quite a lot, especially over a race tint. And from there, there started to be even more focus on all the tire management. We also saw some iterations from Pirelli to try and change the tires, make them thermally more resilient. Because in races you would see some cars blistering the tire front or rear depending on the characteristics. But you could see that the performance these cars were generating was far greater than probably what was expected before 2017. By the end of 2018, looking at 2019, there was then a genuine attempt to try and contain the downforce these cars produce, while trying to find a way aerodynamically to make them a little less sensitive when you follow another car, to try and promote better overtaking and better racing. And that led to the new 2019 bodywork regulations.
The first competitive action of the 2017-18 edition was the Alicante import race, which saw Mafre send out an early warning to the rest of the fleet as they confirmed themselves as a race favourite, convincingly winning on home turf. The road to the start wasn't as smooth for Dutch entry Team Nobel. Just days before the start of leg 1, skipper Simeon Team Point was replaced, prompting a court case in the Netherlands that reinstated him just in time.
5 seconds to go.
Leg 1 was a short sprint through the Strait of Gibraltar to Lisbon. Vestas 11th Hour Racing held on to a small lead to take the win over Mafre and Dongfeng race team. An intriguing start to the offshore action. Leg 2 was a classic, 7,000 miles south through the doldrums to find the trade winds towards Cape Town. The fleet set off from Lisbon heading straight into over 30 knots of wind, the first real test for the teams and the boats, an early taste of what lay ahead in the Southern Ocean legs.
I can't do 19 days of this, no one can.
Mafre once again showed pure boat speed and tactical prowess, getting south early to get around the South Atlantic High, holding off the others in a drag race to the finish line in South Africa. Leg 3, a monster. 6,500 miles to Melbourne, a first experience of the Southern Ocean for many, and the first double-point scoring leg. The fleet took off south to find the big winds and big waves. More drama for Team Nobel. Whilst racing in 4th place, serious damage to the mast track meant the team slowed to attempt a complicated fix at sea. A painful journey to the finish line would see them finish last. A jibing battle between the leading 2 red boats of Mafre and Dongfeng race team saw multiple lead changes as they pushed as far south as they could to the ice exclusion zone. Mafre finally getting the better of the Chinese team, leading the charge north to a Christmas Eve finish in Melbourne. After a welcome festive rest period in the southern Australian city, the fleet set out back north, encountering another tricky crossing of the doldrums, which saw Sun Hun Kai Scallywag roll the dice and opt to cut the corner heading east to lead the fleet towards their homecoming in Hong Kong, though they didn't have it all their own way.
Hey, runner! Can you see him best? Nipper, out of the way! Can you see him? Hold, just hold! Hold! Give me a stern, mate. We're trying to find new ways to lose the race, though, I must say.
They held out for a fantastic first win in front of their home crowd in the heart of the city. Sadly, approximately 30 miles from the finish, Vestas 11th Hour Racing were involved in a collision with a non-racing vessel, which resulted in the fatality of a crew member from the other boat. Vestas 11th Hour Racing suffered serious hull damage, meaning they would not be able to rejoin the race in time for leg 6. The best option was to send the boat on a container ship to Auckland for the necessary repairs. A Volvo Ocean Race first was the import race held in Guangzhou. Thousands of Chinese fans came to see their local heroes on board Dongfeng race team, but it wasn't to be their day as they snagged a mark at the start of the race, leaving them in last place. Mafre continued their winning ways in the import series as they mastered the currents of the Pearl River to take the win. Leg 6 was almost the reverse of Leg 4 as the teams chose their routes back south to Auckland. But for the first few days of the leg, the fleet would sail in the opposite direction to where they needed to go in order to find the stronger breeze.
I think Auckland is over there, and we're going, I don't know why, but KP must have a really good reason that we're going there.
Finally, the fleet turned south for an easier than usual doldrums crossing. Team Axonabel were the first through the light winds and took a slim lead over Sun Hun Kai Scallywag that they managed to hold on to all the way to the finish in Auckland to become the 4th boat to win a leg in this edition of the race. David Witt, Sun Hun Kai Scallywag were hot on their heels, finishing on the podium for a second consecutive leg. Leg 7 posed a significant challenge, 7,600 miles through the fiercest ocean on the planet. The sailors knew that this leg would not be easy.
This is the kind of leg where you can lose so much, a lot of stress, and it's going to be tough.
Within days, the fleet were battling 40-knot winds, huge swells and freezing temperatures. With the fleet constantly jibing along the southern ice limits within the furious 50s, Team Brunel squeezed into the lead.
The technical situation right now, it's I think about 1,500 miles to go to the Horn. We're in the lead, so that's the good news. We've been going very nicely the last couple of days.
On March 25th, everything changed for David Witt's Sun Hun Kai Scallywag. At approximately 1300 UTC, race control in Alicante was informed of a serious situation. British sailor John Fisher had been swept overboard in 35 knots of wind and a difficult sea state. The team conducted an exhaustive search for several hours in extremely challenging conditions, but were unable to recover their teammate. With the weather forecast due to deteriorate further, they retired from the racing to head for landfall in Chile. The news sent shockwaves throughout the fleet.
It affected us all quite emotionally. We were very close to Scallywag as a team.
Say that our thoughts are with the Scallywag crew and all John's family.
Fish as an individual had been a huge supporter of what we were doing and had really made an effort to integrate with the team and talk to all the members.
We want to give some strength to the guys on board Scallywag and the whole team, of course, onshore. But personally, I know unfortunately how difficult it is.
And you know, he always gave me some words of encouragement.
And I hope to see them safely on shore very, very soon.
As Sun Hun Kai Scallywag headed for Chile, the other 6 teams were racing through extreme weather conditions. Mafre was suffering as they attempted to fix damage to their mast track from earlier in the leg. But then, as they approached Cape Horn, the Spanish team's mainsail split into 2 pieces. This forced them to stop in the lee of Cape Horn, make repairs, and nurse their boat into Itajaí. Vestas 11th Hour Racing rounded Cape Horn in second behind Team Brunel. The next day, disaster struck as their mast came down in the lumpy seas of the South Atlantic.
Is everybody in a safe place back there?
The team made their way to the Falkland Islands where they salvaged a jury rig, which they would use in a race against time to make the start of their next leg in Brazil. Team Brunel held fast, with Dongfeng Race Team snapping at their heels to claim their first victory after a disappointing first 6 legs of the race. Although victory was bittersweet for skipper Bauer Becking.
Yes, it has been an epic leg. Thank you very much for the congratulations. But I think we're a little sad in our heart, very sad in our heart. We know why. John Fisher's loss sits very deep with us. But of course, sport-wise, we sailed a very nice leg, so we're confident with that.
As the rest of the fleet were finishing the leg in JBay, Sun Hung-kai Scallywag had made the tough decision to keep participating in the race in John's
The best thing we can do in John's memory is get on the job, get on with it on Sunday. You know, if he was standing behind me right now, he'd be telling me to harden up. Don't be soft and get on with it, and that's what we're going to do on Sunday.
Leg 8, a push back into the Northern Hemisphere. On paper, a simple reach all the way to Newport, Rhode Island, but it would prove anything but. For the first few days, upwind conditions demanded strategic risk-taking, and it was D. Kafari's turn the tide on plastic that made the best of it, leading the fleet around the corner of Brazil with another equator crossing on the horizon.
Everybody's ready to jump in front of the others.
As the breeze shut down off the coast of Newport and with thick fog engulfing the boats, Mafre crept past Team Brunel just metres from the line. Delight for Xavi Fernandez's team, disappointment and frustration for Bauer Becking. With the scores at the top of the leaderboard tightening up, the Leg 9 transatlantic crossing with double points would be key to winning the overall title. The teams flew out of Newport and were quickly into the big winds of the North Atlantic. Difference of opinion of how to find their way around the low pressure saw a big split in the fleet. However, when the 7 boats converged, they found themselves reaching along in record-breaking conditions.
Pretty good at that angle.
5 of the teams broke the Volvo 65 24-hour distance record. However, it was Team AkzoNobel who went one step further in setting a new outright Volvo Ocean Race record. 602.54 miles were covered by Simeon Team Point and crew, an impressive feat in the one design class.
I would have bet the house you couldn't do 600 in one of these boats.
While Team AkzoNobel were writing themselves in the history books, it was the other Dutch team that were victorious, taking the maximum 14 points at the finish line in Cardiff. Bauer Becking and his team were on the charge towards the top of the leaderboard.
You know, you have good moments, you have bad moments. But I think right now, the team is in a really good fashion. I think as well, you can start dreaming about things sometimes. You can start thinking about this is actually really possible. But I think that the really good thing is we're feeling all good, and we actually think we can win this thing.
After a light and fickle start to leg 10, and with multiple lead changes, the fleet passed the top of Scotland and found themselves once more in tough conditions, blasting across the North Sea in 30+ knots of breeze.
Do you promise me these are the last days of water, getting water in our faces? It's been a tough old race for having plenty of water over the deck and lots of wind. I guess we'll try and enjoy the last of it and be glad when it's over.
Only a stellar performance from Team Brunel would see them with the chance of the overall win in The Hague. And incredibly, they cruised past first Dongfeng Race Team and then Mafre. The once invincible reaching speeds of the Spanish boat had been overcome. Finishing in the Swedish city of Gothenburg once more on the top step of the podium meant 3 teams were now tied at the top of the leaderboard on 65 points. Over 44,000 miles of racing completed, and it was all to come down to the last 900-mile sprint to the ultimate destination, The Hague. The order the top 3 would finish their leg would be the order they stand on the final podium. The final leg was to include a rounding of a waypoint in the city of Aarhus. Dongfeng Race Team were first around with Mafre in hot pursuit. A special moment for Danish flag Vestas 11th Hour Racing, rounding in third to the cheers of the home crowd. The real challenge for the final leg will be the decision of which way through the traffic separation zones to take. Either stay offshore playing the shifts or hug the coast of the Netherlands in the hope of better breeze. Dongfeng Race Team were the first to lay their cards on the table, bearing away and heading towards the coastal option. But Team Brunel and then Mafre opted to stay offshore. The Chinese boat knew that in the short term they would lose miles to their opponents, whilst Team Brunel and Mafre were also concerned that Dongfeng Race Team would have the favourable conditions in the final miles of the leg. An agonising final night, not just for the 3 teams, but also for their fans, as over 9 months of racing would boil down to the final nerve-wracking miles. Until just 6 miles out, no one knew who would prevail and emerge victorious. The final mark of the race saw Dongfeng Race Team pass first, just 3 miles ahead of Mafre, and with a huge flotilla of boats surrounding them, they crossed the final Inmarsat finish line with emotions running high. Charles Cordrelia realising his dream and etching the name of Dongfeng Race Team on the trophy after skippering his team to victory in the 2017-18 Volvo Ocean Race.
It's not a specific sneaker, it's just sneakers overall. When I put them on, I'm laying the foundation for who B-Boy Moy is. And every day is different, and that's why I'm also a collector of sneakers. But just because I'm a collector doesn't mean they're just kind of just sitting at the house collecting dust. I'm rocking them every single day because every day I get a chance to be a new person. And that's what sneakers are for me. So my first pick is gonna be the Jordan 3. It takes me back to my early years in breaking, the late 90s, early 2000s, rocking Jordan 3s and battling all over the globe with them. This Jordan 3 is called Animal Instinct, but why I picked it is, you know, the wildlife feature to it. My entire career, that's exactly what it's been. An animal in the jungle trying to survive, and so it's definitely a significance of what my journey or my career has been in the world of breaking. Jordan 3, Animal Instinct. Every single piece of element of a sneaker represents something different for me. I don't know, man, it was just something that as a kid, I just followed the details. Next up, Air Max 97, the collab with Sean Wotherspoon. Everything about hip hop culture and everything about just fashion stands out in this shoe right here. It got some cool little features. If you go on the inside, got a little smiley face, and on the tongue, you got these little Velcro little situations on there, but that wave in the front, another significance to what I consider, you know, my career and everything that I do is just wavy, you know, because you never know what's gonna happen, but a lot of ups and downs, but you gotta keep rocking, and that's why I rock this shoe. A perfect sneaker for me is something that's simple, fresh, comfortable, and easy to rock. For my third pick, I'm gonna go with the Cactus Jack Jordan 1 Lows. I've always been a fan of Jordan. I mean, who hasn't as a kid? And there's something about this mid to oversized Nike check that's reversed. When I think about that, if I relate it to what I do, I like to take the simple things in life and just find a different direction and just change the game with it. And I think that's exactly what he did with this shoe. So it's just a simple feature with a different direction, and that's why I rock with it. You know, what's really special about sneaker culture, I kind of align it to, you know, hip hop and the breaking culture, is that there's always reinvention, there's always innovation. People are always finding new ways to keep it fresh. When you think about Virgil Abloh, rest in peace, when you think about Virgil and what he did with Off-White and what he brought to the sneaker game, really changed the world of sneakers, design, fashion, and opened so many career opportunities for people of color and beyond. Same thing with Jerry Lorenzo from Fear God. He came in, did the same thing. Kanye West. This one was something that I had to cop. Yeezy 350 Oxford Tan. The flexibility, the durability about the shoe just really stood out to me, especially as a B-boy. You like that comfort and you want to be able to move around with it, that flexibility. When I saw this colorway specifically, I just knew I could rock it however. You could dress it up or dress it down. It definitely speaks with class, and so one of my all-time favorite Yeezys right here, so shout out to Kanye. That's reinvention, that's innovation. That's the beautiful part about sneaker culture. And that's why I align it with breaking culture, because the icons in breaking, the legends in breaking, till this day are still reinventing and innovating and changing the game with what they love to do.
What I tend to look for when I go to places are things that are visually appealing. When you walk down the sand dunes here in St. Lucia, just thinking of the old shipwrecks or the explorers, the first thing they saw was these long beaches and impenetrable forest. They still look exactly the same. I can't imagine there are many places in the world where you can see tons of things in one day. I want to pinch my arm and say, this can't be true. I'm in the middle of this. I think the uniqueness is that it's diverse. You could peel off layer after layer and you'll find more and more things. It's all here for you to just be part of.
August 25, 1944. During World War II, Allied forces in Europe liberate Paris, ending 4 years of Nazi Germany's occupation of the French capital. 1875. Captain Matthew Webb becomes the first person to swim the English Channel, making the journey from Britain to France in 22 hours. 1985. 13-year-old Samantha Smith and her father are killed in a plane crash in Maine. 2 years earlier, the girl's letter to the Kremlin led to her famous peace tour of the Soviet Union during the Cold War.
Soviet people do not want war. They're a lot like us, and they want no harm to the world just like we do.
1956. Alfred Kinsey, pioneering researcher of human sexual behavior, dies in Bloomington, Indiana. He was 62. 1930.
Bond, James Bond.
Sean Connery, the original actor to play super spy 007 on the silver screen, is born in Edinburgh, Scotland. 1918. Composer and conductor Leonard Bernstein is born in Lawrence, Massachusetts. Among his well-known musicals, On the Town and West Side Story. 1954, Elvis Costello, the musician whose work ranges from rock's new wave to classical and ballads with Burt Bacharach, is born in London. And in 1975, Bruce Springsteen's album Born to Run, considered a rock and roll masterpiece, is released. Today in history, August 25th. Sandy Kozel, The Associated Press.
Welcome back in our studio, and in today's news,